High recon is always recommended because the wire's environment is dynamic and constantly changing. It's essential that a pilot conduct a high-level recon before entering into that potentially dangerous environment.
This is going to be an amazing time for transmission construction, and that means there's going to be more big towers and big lines in the air than we've seen in the last 50 years, more than we've ever had here in America, and there's going to be more hazard for people who are flying in those areas than we've ever seen before. So if ever there was a time to think about what's out there in the electric grid, if you're going to be in the air, this is it. So you need to really be aware of that. And be aware that just because you've flown a particular path before doesn't mean it's safe anymore. There may be a new transmission line, big towers going in, and you've got to really be on your game.
We had one of our pilots in California working on a line, and he dropped a crew off on a tower structure. Came back, that's why I meant, came back a while later, and they had raised the static wire where he was working. Since then, we've been real active about making sure that you know exactly what they're doing on these structures when you come back, and he just barely tipped the wire.
It's a myth that more time in the cockpit will make you more safe. Experience is not a guarantee for safe flying in the wires environment.
So a low number of flight hours or inexperienced pilots are not typically the pilots that are getting involved in these accidents. Usually these are pilots that have over 2,000 hours, are usually between 45 and 55 years old, so have been flying for several years, and just for whatever reason lose their situational awareness.
So if total awareness of your environment and the amount of time spent in the pilot's seat are not guarantees for your safety, what is?
Training in the hazards associated with this particular environment is the essential ingredient. The aviation industry has always tended to judge a pilot's competency by the thickness of his or her logbook. How many flight hours I have will tend to make me a much safer pilot. Statistically, that's not true with the wire and obstruction strike accidents.
In the military, especially when I went through flight school, I asked the guys that come back from flight school, how has your training changed from what I went through? Now we're talking about a couple of decades worth of training difference. And it's not really any different. Cross the wires at the poles. All roads have wires. Don't hit the wires. We might be in the wire environment. Don't hit the wires. What on earth does all that mean? I had no idea that I could, at a glance, measure, using the AC information, I can look and visually measure how tall a tower is, compare it against what I'm looking at on the sectional or attack chart or virtually any other navigation device that I have in front of me, and confirm that's the tower, that's the wire set that I'm looking at. Guy wires bring down doggone near as many aircraft as transmission lines or static lines. And yet very few of us understand when a power company or transmission operator has to guy off a pole.
Training to avoid wire strikes is more than just a couple of hours in a classroom. It's an ongoing program. For example, the electric utility industry has adopted an industry practice of providing 6 months of training for its pilots and ground crews.
In 2006, we had a fatal accident where we lost a crew. They ran into a 66,000 volt line.
This afternoon, we got a call about a helicopter that had gone down in the canyon north of where we're standing right now. A wire electrical power line that's been downed also, we believe, is probably part of the crash.
We had to reevaluate everything we do, top to bottom. And we started with the patrol side. We had to figure out how to make the whole thing safer to the crew.
Keep your aircraft moving until you can see the skyline. Let me know when you can see the skyline.
I'm not sure about this. I can see the conductor, but I can't see the rest of it. Huh?
Just keep it moving until you see the skyline. Just keep moving forward.
Well, I still can't see it. You know what? I'm not really comfortable with this here.
That's all right. Just keep moving forward until you see the skyline. Don't worry about it.
Well, you know what? I'm going to stop here. I can't see that skyline.
All right. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. Don't let somebody talk you into doing something you think is just absolutely crazy.
The important thing is we realized that we weren't as safe as we thought we were. It's very important that the patrolman be integrated into the flight crew. In the past, he's performed almost as a mission commander, in that he would say, okay, go fly this circuit. And then we'd go fly the circuit. The pilot took care of everything. He had to understand the fuel requirements, he had to understand the terrain, he had to understand the weather, and there was none of that put on the patrolman. But now we actually make the patrolman a part of that in the pre-planning briefing. They have to discuss the weather, they have to discuss the fuel stops, they have to discuss the lighting conditions, which way they're going to fly it. They have to go through each one of the known hazards on that circuit so they're readily identified to the flight crew, and then discuss how they're going to mitigate these things. Before they begin the patrol, the patrolman is obligated to identify with the pilot all of the hazards or issues on that given circuit before it's flown.
Now that we've gone through this class, we meet with the pilot, we have a tailboard, we discuss about what we're going to patrol, where we're going to patrol, the weather, the winds, if we're going to be there in the afternoon. Also learn about some of the things in the aircraft, some of the shutoff valves for the fuel, for the batteries, what to do in an emergency, where the fire extinguishers are at, which I never knew before. It wasn't part of the tailboard. It was just get in and fly. Now we're part of the cockpit as a team. We both fly out there, we both kind of patrol, and we both come back safe every day. So I feel more confident and more comfortable knowing what's going on now. Before the class, I would just be more of the hanging on and praying. Now I'm actually involved looking for hazards, calling out clearings or wherever they may be, or a hazard that we're going to be landing. And besides, doing the radio, I'm, part of the crew.
Flying power lines is a high-risk job. And so that is why that we go through such a long period of training, 6 months minimum, and the 30 hours of ride-along and all that stuff. I mean, it is a high-risk job, and all these tools that we've learned through that past 6 months, that's what's going to keep us safe out there. The high recon, the proper tailboards, the experienced patrolmen, all that stuff, that's what's going to keep us safe. Wire strike prevention programs should be taught at flight schools.
I would hope that the pilots would not have to talk the management into providing the wire strike training. I like to believe that us, and in terms of HAI and other associations and agencies, have already done our job and have made companies and owner-operators aware of the benefit of wire strike training, and that they're already doing it. If that's not the case, unfortunately, and your company and your management are not providing this type training and don't seem to be focusing on it, then I would suggest strongly that you open up a dialogue with your management, and you also might take the initiative and volunteer to your management to set up that training program and actually run and operate it.
Well, a good training program should consist of a number of things. First of all, crew resource management is essential in the wire and obstruction environment. Almost all aircraft, with few exceptions, operate down low level in this environment with a crew. And so a training program should involve everybody who is crew member on board that aircraft, whether that be a lineman, whether that be a flight nurse, police officer, whoever. Everybody has to be speaking the same language.